Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith. I know it's been a while since I've posted any reviews, but just been way too busy with my day job and worn out, and just haven't had the energy to review anything. But I'm back, obviously, and today I'm talking about Bine White by Ronald Malfi. This is from Kensington Books, and this is the story of Paul Gallo. But before we get to him, we start in Dred's Hand, Alaska, where a man comes into town and he confesses to killing 8 people, and then he just sits and waits for the police to show up so he can show them where the bodies are. What does this have to do with Paul Gallo? Well, Paul Gallo has a twin brother named Danny, and Paul hasn't heard from Danny in over a year, and Danny's last message was from Dred's Hand, Alaska. So Paul thinks that his brother is one of the victims. So he goes up to Alaska, and that's when things get strange. Okay, they were actually strange before that, but they get even more strange as Paul gets sucked into a bizarre mystery as he attempts to find out what happened to his brother Danny. And so that's it in a nutshell. That's what gets this story going. So we'll show the book again. And Ronald Malfi has been knocking it out of the park the last few years, and he hasn't lost a step with this one. What I like about his writing is that, at least for the last 3 books, they've all felt very different. And this definitely feels different than the last couple that he's had. It's a very creepy book, a very slow building of dread as Paul goes up to Alaska. And first he contacts Jill Ryerson from Major Crimes, who was someone he had contact with a year ago when he filed a missing persons report for his brother. And nothing obviously came of that, because he's still wondering what happened to his brother, Danny. So anyway, Paul first goes to Jill Ryerson, and he wants to find out if Danny is among these murder victims. And then he ends up going to Dred's Hand, where it's a creepy little out-of-the-way, broken-down kind of town. And he's just looking for answers. He's trying to question the residents. Well, I guess he does question the residents, but he's finding it difficult to get answers to his questions. And this ramshackle town is surrounded by crosses. And when it mentions that on the back of the book, that there are these wooden crosses, and at first I pictured them as like little roadside memorial type crosses, but these are big crosses that somebody has put up all along the road and into the woods and around the entire town. And the residents of the town talk about the devil being out in the woods, and they have all these myths, I suppose. And as Paul questions people, as other characters, Jill Ryerson from Major Crimes is one of the main characters. As she investigates, we learn about all these other weird things that have happened in and around this area. And there are strange markings, almost like warding symbols, that Paul discovers and that pop up here and there. And it's just really a creepy story. Part mystery, definitely horror, and all just creepy. I can't think of a better word than just creepy. When I was reading this, I was reminded of early Michael Slade. I believe that's the author's name. Michael Slade wrote a book called Ghoul, and others that I can't remember the title of. And I was also, it felt kind of like Adam Neville's book The Ritual, simply because of the setting. They're not set in the same place, but they have the same kind of out-of-the-way, cold, wooded setting. And The Ritual is another great book. And it just, reading this sort of brought back the feelings that I got when reading the old Michael Slade and the Adam Neville. So, which is a good thing, because those were the Adam Neville, the Michael Slade, good stuff. So anyway, Paul Gallo, a very interesting character. You know, and we get to know him pretty well. We meet him when he's over on basically across the country from Alaska. He's a teacher, and we learn about him and his family, his brother, his twin brother Danny, their relationship when they were growing up, which started out real strong, you know, twins, very close, kind of didn't have a falling out, just sort of drifted apart. And, you know, we get the contrast between the two brothers, but they still have a connection. And then Danny's trying to get things together, sort of goes on a walkabout, and that's when he disappears. But it's Ronald Malfi writes such great characters, and getting to know Paul and his relationship with his brother, and with a few other people, some of the minor characters. But Paul comes off as a really strongly written character. Jill Ryerson, I like her, and some of the other ancillary major crimes characters. They're all pretty interesting, but Jill is definitely the most interesting of those characters, as we get to know her and we get her backstory. And there are a few other some of the residents of Dread's Hand. I always want to call it Dead Hand or Dreadhead, but it's Dread's Hand. So if I stumble over that when I say it again, please forgive me. But some of the other residents of Dread's Hand are pretty interesting. The folks that run the place where Paul ends up spending the night, where he rents a room. It's run by this woman, and her father is there, and they're pretty interesting. Some weird things happen there. And just, again, the setting, this completely isolated setting, and the behavior of the characters there, just, the dread just keeps building and building. It's like a weight on your shoulders as Paul investigates. And, you know, some people are trying to turn him away. He's not going for it. He wants to know what's happening. He finds all sorts of bizarre things. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they just sort of keep pushing him forward, as much as the residents of Dread's Hand are trying to hold him back. These things that he stumbles across are pushing him forward. And of course, it's all going to build and build and build and lead up to a pretty wild conclusion. I don't want to talk about that at all in any specific way, but it is satisfying to me anyway. And I like the way I like where things go with Paul and with Jill. And Jill meets some pretty interesting characters as well. The book is, oddly, for being in this mainly in this isolated town in Alaska, we do have a lot of interesting characters that Paul runs across, that Jill runs across, and things happen with the man who said he killed 8 people. Some really interesting things there. Excuse me. So I don't know if I'm being coherent at all, except that it's a really, really good story. Very creepy. Gonna use that word again. Filled with dread. Using that word again. Very different from other Malfi that I have read, which is a good thing. Absolutely a good thing. There are authors you can tell that it's a book by a particular author. You know, Stephen King. If you're reading Stephen King, even if you don't have the cover and you don't know who wrote it, you start reading Stephen King. I think if you've read his stuff before, you're going to say, hey, this is Stephen King. I think Brian Keene is similar to that. You know, as different as the stories are, they're still something about it that says, hey, this is a Brian Keene story I'm reading. This is a Stephen King story I'm reading, whatever it happens to be. I don't know that I can say that for Ronald Malfi. His writing is fantastic, but it's, and I hate to say it's generic, it's just so different from book to book. Little Girls was amazing. That one came out in 2015, I believe. And then 2016 was The Night Parade, I believe was the title of it. That book was fantastic, but completely different than Little Girls. And now, excuse me, with Bine White, another completely different type of story. And it just, as fine as the writing is, I personally don't see anything in these last 3 books that he's had, the 3 I've mentioned. To me, there's nothing, reading any of those without knowing who wrote them, I wouldn't be able to identify them as Ronald Malfi books. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. I guess it's a good thing because, again, that means they're all so different and they're all so good. But I'm supposed to be talking about this one. Really just fantastic. I'll give you my rating now. I think you can guess what the number is. The drawing, not that great. I wasn't sure what to draw for this. I've just been so tired from work and the heat, and my brain hasn't been functioning properly. I've had trouble coming up with what to draw for some of these things. I may have bitten off more than I could chew when I started this whole drawing out my ratings thing. But anyway, all of that being said, I gave Bine White by Ronald Malfi 5 out of 5 warding symbols. Very crude. And if you read the book, you'll have a sense, I think, of why I went with such a crude drawing. And so those are sort of the warding symbols. They said it looked at times like an eye. So I kind of went with that. But read the book, you'll know what this is all supposed to mean. But 5 out of 5, that's the important part. Just another winner by Ronald Malfi. Like I said, the last 3 years, he's just been knocking it out of the park. And if you just want that slow building dread, that's again, it's like a weight. It's creepy and it's dreadful and it's bizarre and it's mysterious. And I think you're gonna, once you start, you're gonna be pulled in and taken along for the ride. You're gonna want to follow Paul Gallo wherever he goes as he tries to find out what happened to his brother. I mean, it's just really a compelling story. Unputdownable is a word I like to use on occasion, and this certainly is. I did finish it some time ago, but again, I just have not had the energy to record a video. But I'm recording this video on July 24th, and the book comes out July 25th, so I figured I'd better get this one done, get it up so you can go out and grab it brand new. You'll have that new book smell when you pick it up, and I highly recommend that you pick this up. So that's Bine White by Ronald Malfi. Pick this up, pick up his earlier books. He's a must-read at this point for me, and he should be for you if you're looking for just really good horror stories, compelling horror stories. So, I'll have links for this book in the description below. Shouldn't be too difficult for me to find links to put in there, since it comes out tomorrow, as of this recording. So I'll have links in the description below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. So if you have specific questions, feel free to ask. I will answer just with a spoiler warning, so we don't spoil it for folks. And if you do pick it up and read it, which you should, please feel free to comment at any time so we can talk about and what a fantastic book this is. Please like, share, and subscribe. I do have a few more books under my belt. I just have to figure out what I'm going to draw for them, so I will have more reviews coming, hopefully at a steadier pace than recently. So that's it. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.